Hey everybody, Mike here. No more excuses. It's great to see you guys. I apologize for taking a little time here as we wait for the publication of the phase 3 peer review data from Brainstorm. I've been speaking with many of you kind of offline, as Michelle has been doing an incredible job leading the charge for AACT, or ACT for ALS. But I want you each to know I see all of your messages, and I very much appreciate you sending those. Thank you very much for what you do and your continued fight in this. Um, and I wanted to discuss a little bit with you today because yesterday was a big day, and I believe it's going to lead to even bigger things. Sometimes it feels like we don't perhaps get results from our work, but trust me, guys, behind the scenes, what's happening and what's going on, and nothing could be further from the truth. The one thing we've learned is that pressure, patient-led grassroots pressure, absolutely works to change this disease. Anyway, what happened yesterday was incredible. As many of you are aware, AMX 35 will now get a chance to go before the FDA in the U.S. They had scheduled, Amylyx had scheduled an application already in Canada, but the FDA had said no for this drug. Remember that as of a couple of months ago, before the ALS hearings anyway, the answer was still no. FDA had told the company, same thing it told Brainstorm, which is, hey, we think you need more data. And remember that AMX 35 had positive data. It met its endpoint. And made the company schedule another absolutely horrible trial. 600 people in this phase 3 Phoenix trial that was scheduled and probably will still happen, but may be used as a phase 4 trial, where a phase 4 trial normally would be, and we'll talk about that in a minute, for post-marketing purposes. But this trial was terrible, guys, this Centaur trial. Now remember that each trial, this would have been a 52-week trial. So, 48-week trial, meaning almost effectively a year. Might as well be 52 weeks. But imagine that. The last trial was 6 months or 24 weeks, which is more standard. But imagine a 48-week trial after you just completed a 24-week trial, a 48-week trial with 600 ALS patients and a 2-to-3 placebo ratio, which means that you would have had to get 200 ALS patients into that placebo group. Now imagine that. If you're an ALS patient that's newly diagnosed and can meet the qualifications, not necessarily newly diagnosed, but still in pretty good shape relatively, think about what this FDA was asking people to do. It was asking 600 people to sign up for the trial. And 200 of those people would have received placebo. Okay, now think about this. As No More Excuses was first to report well over a year ago, this drug is available right now if you can get a prescription for sodium phenylbutyrate and Tudga. But the FDA was effectively asking 200 Americans or Canadians or whatever, people with ALS who would get in this trial, to really sacrifice themselves for this trial. Why would anybody ever sign up for a trial like this, knowing that they could just go out and purchase the drug? This was, and really still is, insanity for ALS. To ask 200 Americans to just say, well, you know what? I think I'll be nice and I'll just go ahead and sacrifice taking the drug now so that we can get this data. Unbelievable what the FDA was trying to make this company do. And I think, thanks to your pressure and these ALS hearings in Congress that you worked so hard to get, in combination, of course, with Brian Wallach at IMALS, the FDA saw the writing on the wall. It looked terrible during these hearings. And those hearings were a watershed moment for ALS. As we mentioned, as we said, a lot of people didn't believe that, but they were. When Representative Schakowsky slammed her fist down on that desk, and then, of course, Brian Wallach came in and delivered, and his wife Sandra came in and delivered the final blow at near the end, got a standing ovation from Congress. Those hearings, guys, I believe, and I think we said something like this at the time, will be looked upon in history as one of the moments that transformed ALS for sure. Now, I would not say that yesterday's actions, while great, and I want to be clear about this, we fully support this, guys. We fully support what the FDA did because it showed regulatory flexibility, which is exactly what we want it to do. It realized, I believe, that it made a mistake, and furthermore, Congress, I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall in some of those phone calls, because there's no doubt that pressure came from Congress, which came from you, and groups like IMALS to act, to tell the FDA, look, it's unfathomable for you and unethical and inhumane for you to make these people, 600 people, essentially jump on the grenade for AMX35 when this drug already met its primary endpoint. The secondary endpoints, were not met, but that's okay. According to the ALS-FRSR score, the drug slowed death by about 6 months. And in ALS, anything like that, it's a must approve. We've already got 2 drugs that are approved that show kind of similar results. And guys, they're approved. So why on earth would the FDA do what it did, meaning that it asked for redundant data? This is a term, I'm not sure it's a professional term, but it's what we call it. It's redundant data. It's confirmatory data. It is inhumane data is what it is. And we've got the same issue with NUROWN. And I want each of you to know, that's why I'm doing this video today, that we will not rest in this group until NUROWN is approved. The FDA must also now, the CBER, must immediately show regulatory flexibility and do the same thing it just did for AMX35. Okay. What happened yesterday is amazing. There's no question about it. But it is not enough. And we will not rest until NUROWN is approved. Period. The best way to do that is exactly with what happened yesterday. And likely what will happen with the phase 3 Phoenix trial for AMX35. It'll be turned into a post-marketing trial, most likely. And that's exactly what Brainstorm deserves and what NUROWN should have right now. It should also be invited to apply for a BLA, to put a BLA in other words, and then use an additional trial for confirmatory purposes to show the efficacy that we know exists, but that did not quite read in the trial because there were so many sick people in this trial. I want to be clear. NUROWN works. That debate's over. It works for a certain group of individuals, works for others when they get more doses. So I don't want to debate whether or not NUROWN is effective or not. It is. The FDA should now immediately do the same thing that it just did for AMX35. It should ask Brainstorm. It should work together with them to come to the table. I know they've been talking, just as Amylyx has. It's what they do. They're in business to get their products approved. It's no secret that they've been trying to figure out a way forward. And the way forward is simple, guys. It's to offer Brainstorm approval now and to do a confirmatory trial, just like, or post-marketing trial, just like Amylyx is going to get. Now, a couple of things here. It's going to be a short video. I don't want to drag it on, but first of all, I want each of you to know that your pressure did this, okay? Up until 2 or 3 months ago, the answer for Amylyx was no. Remember that, guys. Remember that. And yet, also, and all the other, the community, so-called community, was all behind this application. It was all behind this because it had a positive trial. Now, if you look at the correct data, Brainstorm also, NUROWN would have shown a positive trial, but it didn't. So we don't have apples to apples here, but we do know the drug works for a certain group of people. Again, but here's my point. Up until 2 or 3 months ago, Amylyx got told no. And because of pressure, because of these hearings, and because I'm certain members of Congress were absolutely livid with what they saw. And this is speculation, I don't know, but clearly the FDA had a change of heart. And now it has invited Amylyx to file this application. And yesterday's action ends all debate over one thing I want to mention real quickly. Many have said over the last few years that we're barking up the wrong tree, that it's Brainstorm's sole responsibility to file for an application, a BLA, biologic license, and that the FDA just sits there and waits, okay? And what we saw yesterday proves once and for all, and we'd already said this many times from what happened with Radicava, but what we've said over and over again is that the FDA can and has invited and signaled an intent to approve a drug, just like it did yesterday, because the FDA is not going to go to you and say, why don't you go ahead and submit an application if it's not pretty darn sure that you're going to get approval. This is what we've been saying from day one. Nobody's really been listening to that. Yesterday ended all debate over whether or not the FDA can take unilateral action first to initiate this. I mean, it obviously can't go to a company that has no intent of getting their product approved and ask them to do that. I guess it could, but that's not the way it works. But it certainly knows that Brainstorm wants its drug approved, NUROWN. And it could go, like we've said from day one, again, it could go to Brainstorm and say, look, why don't you go ahead and submit an application, and we'll do in this case, a phase 4 post-marketing trial with real-time surveillance. And we'll approve it now, and you got an X amount of time period to continue to prove efficacy. Okay, and that's exactly the way that the trial for AMX35 is going to go. This brutal 600-person trial that was probably one of the most inhumane trials that you could do, frankly. It was absolutely an abomination to ask 600 Americans to do that for data that was already there. Same situation for Brainstorm, okay? The data's there. It's just that you've got good data mixed in with data that's not good. And we're not going to get into that today over why that is. We will, trust me, we will, once the data, full data is released and the peer review comes out. We've got plenty of time for that. But basically the bottom line is this. The FDA can do the same thing for Brainstorm. It can ask and work with Brainstorm to file a BLA for the approval of NUROWN. And it can do that. It has that ability, and it just did it yesterday. So if you hear anybody say that, like also already has and lied by saying that we're basically going to sit around and wait until Brainstorm files, no, that's not how it works. When the FDA wants something to happen, it will take the initiative, and it will move in and give that drug the first kiss on the cheek. Okay, it'll make the first move. And that's exactly what we saw yesterday. We saw a no, a hard no, turn into a come on over and we'll work with you. That's what we saw. Now, remember, Amylyx was not going to file an application until the news came out yesterday, and I'm sure they've been working on that for a while, but the bottom line is the FDA invited Amylyx to approve or to apply for approval. It can do the same thing for NUROWN, and it must do the same thing for NUROWN. I just want each of you to know that just because nothing's been going on as it appears here, that a lot of work and strategization and all that hasn't been happening behind the scenes. It has. But as we've said before, we're waiting on this data, and I don't know that we can wait much longer, frankly. And we will continue to ask the FDA to do and to pressure the FDA into doing exactly what it did yesterday. And to those who say that it doesn't work that way, yes, it does. The FDA has the power to signal an intent to approve, and it just did. So I want to say thanks to Michelle Lorenz for what she's done for ACT. It's been a truly amazing effort. This group, you guys, have run that tally up now, working on the Senate side. I believe this bill will pass. We despite all these stupid distractions that keep happening, every week there's something else. And we fought that problem now for 2 years. But in the end, I believe it will pass. So I want to say thank you for all of your work. And do not think for 1 second that we've lost focus on getting NUROWN approved or that we ever will. That is the reason that we exist. We want to transform ALS. As good as AMX35 is, remember, it's already available. People have been taking it. It should be approved. There's no doubt about that. It showed a positive extension of life by about 6 months, roughly. And that's great. But it is not a transformative drug. NUROWN is a transformative drug for ALS. We need all the weapons in the toolbox. And NUROWN is, in our opinion, will continue to be, especially with these incredible EAP results. It will continue to set the mark for whatever is to come for a decade or so. There's nothing else that I see for sporadic ALS. Now you can talk about tofersen and all this other, some of these other drugs, clean and that kind of thing, nanotechnology, gold. We don't know those results yet, but we do know that NUROWN could be approved right now. The FDA could go to Brainstorm and say, we will work with you to do a phase 4 trial. And that, my friends, is what we need to continue to hammer on, and that will be our messaging until the company either files and then lets us battle it out, or until the FDA comes to its senses and really gets serious about fixing ALS, or at least doing what it can in the short term until better options come along. Look, we've never said NUROWN's a cure. It's not. But it is every bit, and certainly better than the product that the FDA just asked to file an application. We've seen it. This expanded access program is absolutely blowing my mind with how good some of these people are doing. And NUROWN must be approved. It's that simple. So we're not giving up. Your work matters. Your pressure is changing things. When I came into ALS in 2018, it looked nothing like this. Nothing. There was no hope. In fact, Craig and I, before January of 2019, we were resigned to our fates. And only when we began to see NUROWN's starting to produce results did we get excited about this. But there was still no advocacy foundation. Now, people had tried in the past, yes, but as the evidence built for NUROWN that it is effective, so did the advocacy movement. And when No More Excuses started, that advocacy movement now has grown, along with IMALS, and patients are making the difference, guys. It's you. It's the patients that have finally said, enough is enough. It's time to draw a line in the sand. Frankly, this is crap. We're not going to take this anymore. And we want access to these drugs. So I hope you see with yesterday's action, and here's that headline right here again, right? Pressure from ALS patients. The FDA does an about face. It did it once. It can do it again, and it must do it again for NUROWN. So I want to say thanks. Thank you for all your messages. I see all of them. And I want each of you to know how much we appreciate you fighting for your lives and fighting for change in ALS. And we must recruit more patients to this battle, because I'm confident. I don't know anything that you don't necessarily, but guys, companies do not spend over a decade developing a product and just walk away. I firmly believe in my heart, whether or not we get this published data, we are going to get an application for NUROWN. And when that happens, we have to be ready to fight. And we will launch the mother of all battles for this drug's approval. To those who might have thought that yesterday would quell the fire a little bit, it has not. Not in this group. We know what we want. We want access to drugs that can halt and even reverse slightly some of ALS's damage. We've got one of those drugs right now that we're seeing that happen in a number of individuals, and that drug is called NUROWN. And the FDA should use more regulatory flexibility and immediately offer the same thing to Brainstorm that it just did Amylyx. Guys, if we do that and we get these two drugs, ALS could be a totally different disease within a very short time. For real. Like, we could win this battle. When I say win, what I mean is that advocates will have done everything possible in this time period until the next phase of technology catches up. And maybe that's tofersen, or even beyond that. But if we can get AMX and NUROWN approved, and it looks like one of those is well on its way, and the second it's got to come right behind it. But if those two drugs are available, especially for people early in the disease, that will transform ALS, but not without NUROWN. It will not be transformational unless we have a drug that can slow and halt ALS. That's what patients want. That's what they really want. Not another drug, only another drug, I should say. It's nice to have another option, but it's not enough. We've got to have the big stick. We've got to have a drug that can halt ALS. And that drug's NUROWN. That therapy's NUROWN. Okay? So we need CBER, CBER, to use regulatory flexibility. I'm going to put a tweet right down below here. And I want you all to blast this out there. We're going to continue to hit this message. Regulatory flexibility. All right? It's got to happen. And until we see the next move from the company, from Brainstorm, that's what we got to do. We've got to keep pounding on this issue. And we will. But I want each of you to know we are working on this every day to figure a way forward. All right? Thanks. And it's great to talk to you guys again. See you later. Bye.